Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to April 21st, 1847, a date etched in the darkest chapter of Irish history, the Great Famine. On this day, Reverend Robert Traill, a Presbyterian minister in Schull, County Cork, died of what was locally known as famine fever, a grim euphemism for typhus. Robert Traill was no stranger to hardship, but nothing could have prepared him, or anyone, for the humanitarian catastrophe that unfolded during the famine. Born into a clerical family and educated at Trinity College, Dublin, Traill was a man of conviction and service. He took up his post in the remote and rugged Mizen Peninsula in West Cork in the early 1830s. This was a region where poverty was endemic, even before the blight struck, and when it did, it decimated a population already hanging by a thread. The Great Famine, which began in 1845 and continued through the early 1850s, was not merely a natural disaster. It was a social cataclysm shaped by political indifference, colonial policy, and economic ideology. While much of the relief effort came late or was tragically inadequate, individuals like Robert Traill stepped into the breach with courage and compassion. By 1847, often referred to as Black 47, the crisis had reached its brutal zenith. Crops had failed for the third consecutive year, and death from starvation and disease had become an everyday horror. In this desolate context, Traill converted his manse and later local schoolhouses into makeshift soup kitchens. Working with few resources and against bureaucratic indifference, he served thousands of meals weekly to the starving population of West Cork. At times, he was feeding over 600 people a day, often out of his own pocket. His work came at a terrible cost. Exhausted and constantly exposed to the sick, Traill contracted typhus, the so-called famine fever that swept through overcrowded workhouses and soup queues alike. On April 21st, 1847, he succumbed to the illness, one of many clergy and relief workers who would pay the ultimate price during this harrowing time. But Robert Traill left behind more than a legacy of sacrifice. He left words. His diary entries, later published, offer a devastating first-person account of the suffering he witnessed. In one entry, he wrote of the spectres of famine who came to his door, children with sunken eyes and swollen limbs, and mothers whose milk had dried up long before their infants stopped crying. His words humanize statistics, and his testimony forces us to reckon with the human cost of policy failure and social neglect. It's worth noting that Traill's actions bridged religious and class divides. Though a Protestant minister in a predominantly Catholic and impoverished region, he was universally respected. His work reflected a simple but radical ethos, that in the face of mass suffering, compassion must override creed, and action must replace rhetoric. In a time when many turned away, or worse, justified inaction with economic theories, Robert Traill leaned into the storm. The loss of Reverend Traill was deeply felt in Schull and beyond. His death was symbolic of the toll exacted on frontline workers during the famine, a toll not just physical, but moral and emotional. The burden of witnessing such relentless death and despair left scars that lasted lifetimes, and for many, like Traill, it proved fatal. Today, his legacy is commemorated, not in statues or public holidays, but in the continued effort to tell the stories of those who stood against the tide of suffering. His name may not be as widely known as some political leaders of the era, but in the villages of West Cork, his memory endures as a symbol of selfless humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich and often heart-wrenching past. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go Foil.